If you're buying night vision from a reputable dealer, you're probably going to get the choice between multiple different units based on the serial number of the individual intensifier tube. The magic behind the manufacture of night vision intensifier tubes is so unpredictable that no two are exactly alike. Each one is a special snowflake with its own specs that are measured at the factory before they leave. For a first-time night vision buyer, it's difficult to know what those specs mean and how to tell if you're getting a good device. I'm feeling a little under the weather right now, but I'm not so sick that I can't make a sweet PowerPoint presentation about night vision intensifier tube specs. So here we go. The key specs for night vision intensifier tubes are usually listed on the website of most reputable night vision dealers or available on request. When you buy a brand new night vision unit, it will also come with a spec sheet indicating how the intensifier tube measured up before it left the factory. The key specs in no particular order are the resolution, the SNR, signal-to-noise ratio, the FOM, figure of merit, EBI, equivalent background illumination, halo, and gain. Gain is given in two numbers, but I just sort of lump them together because I don't really care. First up, we're going to talk about resolution because it's the first slide I put into the presentation. Resolution of an analog night vision device is measured in line pair per millimeter. It's not important to understand what a line pair is, just be aware that higher resolution is better. However, that's more important in clip-on applications than it is in helmet-worn applications. Past a certain point, higher resolution doesn't make a difference to your human eyeball, so it's mostly important if you're, for example, using a night vision device as a clip-on in front of a magnified optic, or if you're using it for, like, photography purposes. A good indicator of this is to look at the mil-spec standard of night vision tubes going back over 20 years. The mil-spec minimum resolution was set at 64 line pair per millimeter back in the late 90s, and it hasn't gone up at all over the last 20 years. Most of the other specifications of night vision tubes have gone up quite a lot, and the mil-spec standard has increased to match, but not resolution. Cheaper Gen 2 units and old Gen 3 units will probably have a resolution in the 50s. New Generation 2 Plus units and Generation 3 units often have resolution over 80. Up next is the signal-to-noise ratio. Like with resolution, higher is better here. A higher signal-to-noise ratio will give you a cleaner image, particularly if you're using your night vision in an extremely dark environment. As your environment gets darker and darker, the image of any night vision device will slowly turn into random noise. A higher signal-to-noise ratio means the device produces a usable image for a little bit longer. Resolution and signal-to-noise ratio both factor into a spec called FOM, figure of merit. This isn't a measurement, but just an arbitrary number derived by multiplying the resolution by the signal-to-noise ratio. It's only really useful for at-a-glance estimating how good a night vision tube will be. All other things being equal, a high FOM tube has a pretty good chance of being better than a low FOM tube. But that's not exactly true, and figure of merit is kind of a useless number. First of all, resolution has an exaggerated effect on FOM. If we take two intensifier tubes that both have a resolution above 64, which we consider to be perfectly adequate for helmet-worn use, one of them has a resolution of 72, which is very good. One of them has a resolution of 81, which is extremely good. But that difference in resolution probably isn't going to mean anything to your human eyeball. That 80 plus resolution number is almost definitely going to give that tube a higher FOM, even if it has a lower signal-to-noise ratio, which is a statistic that matters a lot more. Signal-to-noise ratio might differ between these tubes by between 0 and 3 points. But if the resolution differs by 10 line pair per millimeter, then the FOM numbers are going to go all out of whack. The other reason FOM isn't a useful number is because it assumes that all other things about the tubes are equal, which they are not, ever. The next stat is EBI, equivalent background illumination. Just to throw a curveball at you halfway through the list, lower EBI is better. EBI essentially determines the illumination floor your device can operate in. A part of the image has to be above a certain level of brightness for it to cause the intensifier tube to generate anything at all. The EBI of a night vision device also changes when the temperature of the device changes, so EBI is considered to be more critical in hot environments than cold ones. EBI and SNR both affect how the tube performs in extremely dark conditions. If you're in an environment that's too dark for your tube's EBI stat, you're probably going to get a very low contrast image. If you're in an environment too dark for your SNR stat, you're probably going to get a very grainy image. That's a very coarse way to think about it. It's probably not a very good explanation. A lot of people have written a lot of words on what EBI is, but we can focus instead on what EBI means. Some very smart people have made the case that EBI is not nearly as critical as a lot of people in the night vision community used to think. Even EBI numbers that are on the high side of current average tube specs are probably completely fine. Another thing to point out is that the EBI numbers for Photonis Gen 2 Plus tubes are completely nonsense. Photonis measures them in a different way, so if you see a Photonis EBI number, multiply it by 10 to get the real number. If you think a Photonis Echo with an EBI of 0.07 is too good to be true, that's because it is. It's actually a 0.7 EBI, which is still phenomenal, so don't worry about it too much. Up next is Halo. Halo is a remake of Bungie's Marathon, and it's also a tube stat that determines how big the glowing ring is going to be around a light source. A lower Halo value is better. It will give you less bloom around light sources from incoming lights, but also from reflected lights such as your own laser. As I understand it, low Halo values are particularly prized among people who use night vision for astronomy, so you may have to knife fight somebody to get one of those super low Halo tubes. The last one we're going to talk about is gain. This is often two numbers, luminance gain and or photocathode sensitivity. I don't think all spec sheets are going to necessarily have both of these numbers. Luminance gain is the raw horsepower of an intensifier tube. It's how much brighter the tube can make the actual background image. Not to be confused with gain control, which is a knob to manually adjust the amount of gain on the device. Some devices don't have gain control. All devices have some amount of gain, otherwise they wouldn't work. More gain is better, kind of. I mean, to a certain point, it does determine how much brighter you can get the image. But gain is inversely correlated with signal-to-noise ratio. A super gainy tube is probably going to be pretty noisy as well. Unlike other night vision tube stats, which have steadily improved over the years, gain has stayed pretty constant because you don't want it to gain too much. Intensifier tubes are manufactured to hit a target gain level, and if they go too far above or too far below, that's not good. It's not like lucking out and getting a super high signal-to-noise ratio. If you get too much gain, the tube's going to be all fucked up. The exception to that is the new Super Gain series of tubes that you can get from TNVC. Those have significantly higher gain figures, like over 50% more gain than your average intensifier tube. Those also have manual gain control, so you can turn the gain back down so you're not necessarily blowing out the image all the time when you're using it. The marketing claim is that those tubes have much higher gain but comparable signal-to-noise ratio as standard tubes. I don't know how true that is, but that's what they say. They're expensive, but they seem pretty cool. So as of this writing, what are good stats for an entry-level night vision tube? If I was going to buy an affordable PVS-14 with a Generation 3 green phosphor intensifier tube right now and I saw these stats on it, I would feel pretty good. You might make a judgment call and decide that one stat is more important to you than another, and so you might be willing to compromise on one, but not others. However, I'm going to throw two big Nova wrenches in that idea. Wrench number one, the important things that are not numbers. For example, blemish pattern. Having a clean tube with no blems on it is pretty nice. That's not something reflected in the stats. You're going to have to see a picture through the intensifier tube to know what that is. A lot of companies have pictures on the product listing showing the blem pattern, or could probably provide them if you asked. If your tube's got really kick-ass stats but a big dirty blemish right in the middle, well, you might not want it. Another one is gain control. A lot of night vision devices are sold using surplus aviation tubes which do not have manual gain control. Manual gain is an extremely useful feature, and you may want to prioritize that over a slightly nicer tube that has automatic gain. Another one is auto gating. It'll be pretty difficult to find a non-auto gated Generation 3 tube these days, but you might still find some surplus tubes out there that don't have auto gating, which is a useful feature to protect the tube from damage. Another one is phosphor color. You might just really want white phosphor and not care if that means you have to take a hit on some stats. And also there are the physical properties of the night vision device itself, like the housing and the optics. Those are going to have a significant impact on the quality of life and the usability of your night vision device. Significantly more than numbers on the spec sheet to the right of the decimal place. The second big wrench to throw into the works is that the differences between these specs are so small that they are measured in lab conditions, and you will never know the difference. The odds are nearly 100% that if you bought a half dozen Generation 3 green phosphor units with L-bit tubes right now and threw away the spec sheets, the only way to tell them apart would be from the blem pattern. You are not going to look through a night vision device and say, I think this has a halo value of over 1.0. Your eyeballs aren't that good. So what is the most important intensifier tube spec? Is it resolution? No, because resolution above 64 is not going to do you all that much good, and almost every tube has a resolution above 64 these days. Is it signal to noise ratio? Maybe. Nothing beats a good clean image, especially on a dark night when all your buddies are looking at an eyeball full of grain. Is it EBI? Probably not. Even if you live in a warm environment where EBI matters more than in a cold one, it's still not going to make too much of a difference because, again, the numbers are just not that different. Is it halo? Quite possibly. If you're in an area with a lot of light pollution, then the lights you see are going to bloom pretty badly unless you have a nice halo stat. Also, a lower halo value might make it easier to shoot because you're going to have less bloom around the edges of your red dot and your aiming laser. Is it blemishes? Maybe. There's something to be said for having a nice clean tube. There really are a lot of hard and soft factors to consider, and yes, I'm only using that term because this is a PowerPoint presentation and I'm still binge watching Perun basically every week. Number 1, the real world is full of blemishes. When you take your night vision device out into the woods, you're not going to notice blemishes the same way you will when you point them at a white wall in order to take a product picture for a website. In actual use of night vision, a blem has to be pretty bad or pretty conspicuous for you to notice it at all. On the other hand, posting night vision pics is almost the entire point of ownership, and everybody will make fun of you for every blem on your tube. What a great community we have. Number 2, if you really want better specs, you may want to just pay for a higher grade of tube. If you're obsessing over which Elbit XLSH tube to pick, even though the stats are literally within 1 or 2% of each other, you're wasting your fucking time. If the stats really matter to you that much, you're probably going to have to pay more for a higher grade of tube. Step up from an Elbit to an L3, and suddenly it gets a lot easier to find those SNR numbers you're after. Agonizing over trying to get the perfect specs out of literally the cheapest night vision currently on the market is just silly, so stop doing that. Number 3, civilian night vision devices are all rejects. Nobody is really making night vision for civilians, so what we get is kind of the cast-offs and the drippings from the big pan that is military night vision procurement. They really wouldn't let you buy this stuff if there wasn't something wrong with it, and that means basically all night vision devices have one Persian flaw, something that made them fail the mil-spec requirements. That can be a tube with dynamite specs but a really glaring Zone 1 blem. Or it could be a tube that looks great all around but has an extremely loud auto-gating whine. God bless L3 and Elbit systems for not just throwing these things away, but, they're not sending their best. Number 4, I think. I didn't number these on the slide, but I'm giving them numbers now. Pictures and spec sheets don't show everything. Even if you have a picture through the tube showing the blemish pattern and you have a complete spec sheet, you still aren't really going to know how the tube looks until you look through it. As anybody who's looked through several night vision devices can tell you, some tubes just look really good, and it's not obvious why based on the spec sheet. And the last point, having night vision is better than not having night vision. If an obsession over tube specs is what's keeping you from buying night vision, just get over it and buy some goddamn night vision. Don't be the guy who never buys a suppressor because he's worried that the decibels are going to be too fucking high or something. That's why I made this high quality infographic. The point that I'm trying to get across is that the highest quality L3 white phosphor tube is extremely close in performance to even an old military surplus green phosphor pinnacle tube. Real night vision is really cool. Even a low spec unit is leagues above anything you can accomplish with digital or a white light or the naked eye. So try to lighten it up a little bit. If you have any questions, let me know. I can also provide some links to some further reading if you really want to get into the weeds, but I hope you understand the point of this presentation was to keep you from getting into the weeds. I don't know if that came across. Anyway, thank you for watching. I should be back to normal soon. See you guys next time.